Incredible millionaire discovers little girl's awful fate. After stepmother's betrayal, what happened? Jack Thompson had built his life on ambition and grit, yet the shiny high-rise office in downtown Texas felt more like a gilded cage than a celebration of his hard work. He spent his days surrounded by accolades that glimmered and promised success, but did little to fill the hollow ache in his chest. At 42, with wealth that set him apart from most in the small town, he often felt painfully alone, intertwined with the very emptiness he had fought tirelessly to escape. The fear of being trapped in a life ruled by money was beginning to haunt him. It had become apparent that riches offered no companionship, no warmth. One particular Saturday morning, driven by a yearning for connection, he entered the local youth library, a world starkly contrasting the corporate facade he wielded like armor. He rolled up his sleeves, intending to lend a hand with sorting book donations. The dusty smells and the soft rustle of pages grounded him, taking him back to the simpler days of his childhood. Yet, as the morning wore on, it was not the comforting literature that would define his day, but a file tucked beneath a stack of worn paperback stories. Inside the file, Jack discovered the heartbreaking tale of Lily, an 8-year-old girl caught in the web of her stepmother's greed after losing her father in a tragic accident. Each piece of paper revealed the layers of pain, neglect hidden beneath the guise of sorrow, a mother figure whose motives were not as pure as they seemed. A knot tightened in Jack's stomach as he absorbed the injustices he learned of, threatening to rewind his internal clock back to moments he thought he'd long forgotten. The stark contrast of his fortune against Lily's plight felt unbearable, igniting confusion and righteousness within him. Who was he to ignore this beacon for help? This innocent child screaming for a savior, while he cocooned himself in isolation. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With his heart racing and a desperation igniting his spirit, Jack found himself drawn toward a moral dilemma that loomed like a shadow over his life. The thought of doing nothing gnawed at him, all while he questioned the potential consequences of stepping in. How far would he go to protect Lily from her stepmother? In that moment, he felt the weight of his own choices hovering above him. Scrutiny from his life's success felt suffocating as he grappled with the knowledge that wealth would not shield him from the darkness ahead. Jack's resolve hardened as he began discreetly gathering information about Lily's life. He couldn't simply walk away. The shock of discovering the stepmother's emotional manipulation chilled him to the core. His instincts screamed to save her from the clutches of deceit. But the unanswered questions piled up as he stood at an emotional precipice. Just as he summoned the courage to confront this woman hiding behind a facade, a chilling twist emerged. He uncovered a connection, a link between Lily's father and his own family. Suddenly, the stakes altered irrevocably. Jack was left to wrestle with the burden of his past while feeling the pressure of unknown futures threatening to unravel his wealth-fortified existence. Would he reveal the truths he discovered, or remain locked in a life defined by isolation? The weight of those choices left him tense, staring down a path he never expected to tread, with Lily's fate intertwined with his very own. The weight of the unearthing effort tugged at Jack like a relentless current, as he sat in his sleek, minimalist office later that week. The pristine views of downtown Texas no longer impressed him. They felt more like a reminder of his isolation. Behind his polished desk, reminders of past achievements gleamed mockingly while his mind was consumed by thoughts of Lily. He could no longer shrug off her plight as an abstract issue. She was a living being with dreams smothered by a cruel shadow. He found himself pacing, the echoes of his footsteps resonating off the glass walls. The revelation of Lily's connection to his family gnawed at him, unraveling layers of guilt and responsibility. How could he stand by while someone so innocent suffered? The idea of leveraging his resources for her benefit blossomed within him, yet it was shadowed by self-doubt. He was not accustomed to being a crusader. He was a man of finance, not of emotion. As days turned into nights, Jack's mind oscillated between worlds. One painted with the colors of success and security, and the other, a bleak landscape of despair, where wisdom lay in vulnerability. He could feel hunger within himself, a longing to redress the apathy he had worn like a cloak for too long. Each passing moment with Lily's story echoing in his thoughts demanded action. He needed to show her that hope still existed, despite the shattered innocence that had marked her young life. But what did that action look like? Should he simply intervene, retain the child's innocence, and protect her? Or should he confront her stepmother, dragging the bitter truths into the light? The former felt easy, but the latter forced him into a labyrinth where he feared the walls might close in too tightly. Facing that woman could mean shaking the foundation of his life. The thought of engaging in a battle fueled by raw emotion terrified him. That Friday evening, a bell rang within him, a resolve ignited by fervent introspection. He would seek counsel. Jack remembered an old friend from his childhood, a social worker named Maria. She often had her ear to the ground regarding family dynamics and the struggles of underprivileged children. Surely, her perspective could offer clarity. In the dim light of his office, he drafted a message, hesitating at the send button. Was he ready to unveil the first step on this uncharted path of moral duty? Could he possibly barge through the layers of his self-imposed isolation? With a deep breath, he pressed send and stood back from his desk, the faint hum of the city tangling with the thumping of his heart. By morning, a reply from Maria landed in his inbox, filled with warmth and encouragement. Instantly, Jack felt a rush of gratitude. They arranged to meet the following week, and as he hit reply, a sense of anticipation surged through him. This was not merely about confronting a stepmother. This was the start of a journey deeply intertwined with his own self-discovery. But as he prepared for the meeting, a fresh wave of uncertainty washed over him. Would he be able to stand firm against resistance? What if facing the truths he long avoided would open wounds he wasn't ready to confront? Just as doubts clouded his newfound determination, his phone buzzed, a message from Lily's school, an alarming note confirming issues with her safety that deepened his concerns. The realization hit him hard. The time had come to face not only the stepmother, but also the man he wished to become. Jack was standing on the brink of transformation, where the challenge of protecting a little girl might lead him to reclaim parts of himself he thought lost forever. As he prepared for the week ahead, his heart pounded with apprehension and hope alike. What awaited him at that small, rustic cafe with Maria could either propel him forward or plunge him deeper into uncertainty. Little did he know, the true battle had only just begun. Jack stepped into the cafe, its warm, inviting atmosphere contrasting sharply with the storm of emotions brewing inside him. The scent of freshly brewed coffee permeated the air, mingling with laughter and chatter that seemed drowned out in his mind. He spotted Maria in a corner booth, her bright eyes and open smile signaling a sense of comfort he desperately needed. "Jack!" she exclaimed as he approached, her voice genuine and kind. She welcomed him with a hug, and for a fleeting moment, he felt enveloped by a sense of belonging he thought he had lost. They settled into their seats, and he couldn't shake the feeling of impending gravity as he prepared to unfold his troubles. "How have you been?" Maria asked, her voice tinged with sincerity. He realized he hadn't been asked such a question in a long time, not in a way that genuinely cared about his well-being. He hesitated, caught in a tangle of emotion. "Busy. Just the usual," he finally muttered, but she wasn't deterred. "Jack, I can see beneath the surface. What's really going on?" With a deep breath, he dove in. He recounted Lily's story, her struggles, her stepmother's cruelty, and the overwhelming urge to help her, despite the risks. As he spoke, he felt truths he'd buried surfacing, stirring up a long-forgotten empathy within him. Maria listened intently, and as he delved deeper into his concerns, he realized he was not just seeking advice. He was trying to uncover the man he had failed to be for so long. "I'm scared, Maria. What if I don't know how to help her? What if I make things worse?" "Facing fear is part of growth, Jack," she replied, her tone steady. "You have resources. You can advocate for her, be her voice when she doesn't have one. But you must be willing to confront your own fears first." With those words, a flicker of determination ignited within him. Was the man he had become merely a shadow of the person he could be? Each dollar he controlled, each deal he brokered, seemed trivial compared to taking a stand for a child in need. "I feel like I've played it safe for so long, hiding behind success," he confessed, grappling with the dimensions of his self-image. "Now, it feels like the stakes are higher, and I don't know how to navigate this." "Step out of your comfort zone," Maria replied, her eyes full of certainty. "You don't have to do it alone. There are people who can help you. This isn't just about protecting Lily. It's about finding yourself, too." He took a moment to process her words. For the first time, he understood that engaging in something as raw and messy as familial conflict could be a gateway to his own evolution. Confronting the stepmother, standing firm against her, was not simply about Lily. It meant reclaiming his own identity, one that he'd muted in the face of societal expectations. Feeling a surge of inspiration, Jack voiced his resolve. "I'll talk to her, face her. I'll find out what I need to do to ensure Lily's safety." Maria nodded appreciatively, though concern flickered across her face. "Just remember, Jack, the stepmother may not back down easily. Prepare yourself for conflict. It could be more volatile than you imagine." As he left the cafe, an unsettling mixture of hope and fear churned in his gut. Engaging in this battle felt like standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. But a voice inside urged him forward. This struggle would forge him into someone greater, someone capable of real impact. Later that night, as he lay in bed, Jack replayed their conversation. Could this be the turning point he so desperately sought? The question echoed in his mind as he imagined the impending confrontation with the stepmother. He would not avoid becoming the man he aspired to be. Just as he began to drift into sleep, a message buzzed on his phone, breaking the stillness. It was from Lily's school, detailing a significant escalation in her situation. His heart raced as he read the words, dread pooling in his stomach. The real challenge was imminent and the clock was ticking. He had to act fast. The next step was crucial, and failure was not an option. What would he uncover in the process of fighting for Lily? Would he discover strengths within himself he had never realized existed? Or would he crumble under the weight of residency that lurked ahead? With lingering uncertainty, Jack prepared himself to step into the fray. Jack's resolve crystallized as dawn pierced the horizon, illuminating his cluttered thoughts with sharp clarity. The heaviness in his chest that had threatened to paralyze him now felt more like a catalyst, propelling him into action. A decision loomed. The confrontation with Lily's stepmother. But it required a strategy that went beyond mere courage. He began his morning by reviewing everything he had learned about Lily's situation. The emails from the school rattled through his mind like a relentless drumbeat, details slicing into his consciousness. He took a seat at his kitchen table. Papers sprawled around him, forming a chaotic map of what needed to be done. He needed to understand the full scope of the issues at hand. Numbers, timelines, and parental rights swirled together in a cacophony of conflict. As he organized the documents, he felt a glimmer of insight rise within. The very first step toward standing up for Lily demanded he arm himself with knowledge. The law, he recalled from years of business negotiations, was rarely favorable to the unprepared. He slipped into his work persona, a calm and calculated version of himself that was sometimes buried beneath layers of self-doubt. Fueled by that insight, Jack set out to find a lawyer specializing in family law. The call was anxiety-ridden, his voice steady, but his heart racing. Each question posed by the attorney brought new revelations to light. Lily's current predicament was more complex than he had imagined. The stepmother had woven a narrative filled with lies, using her authority and resources to maintain control. Realizing this, a burning anger sparked within him. Why had he let himself be paralyzed by fear when all it would take to stabilize his courage was a single call? He took a deep breath, reminding himself that this was not just about correcting a wrong. It was also a pledge to reclaim his own identity, forged through the fires of conflict. Each piece of legal jargon felt less like a barrier and more like a ladder to ascend step by step. As he left the law office, a growing determination took hold. He could visualize his next move, the confrontation with Lily's stepmother. Armed with the weight of legal knowledge and a firm plan, he felt more prepared than ever. The stakes were high, but so too were the potential rewards, the chance to protect an innocent girl while uncovering the man he was meant to be. Yet, as Jack approached his car, an unsettling uncertainty crept back in. This wouldn't just be a conversation. It would be a battle for Lily's future and his own precarious sense of self. He was stepping into a confrontation that could unravel everything. Questions about his capabilities whispered through his mind. Could he maintain his composure? Would the stepmother's manipulative games prove too overwhelming? With each passing moment, he prepared himself mentally for what lay ahead. He started rehearsing phrases, envisioning responses she might hurl back. "You have no authority here," she might sneer. "This is none of your business." But he would counter with the truth. No matter how much she screamed, emotional manipulation could not drown out reality. The urgency of the situation inexplicably morphed into a mixture of exhilaration and dread. He was poised on the edge of a cliff. Taking that leap could lead to freedom or failure, both for him and for Lily. Quickening his pace, Jack felt the tension coiling tighter within him, propelling him toward the necessary confrontation. Realizing his final preparation rested in his ability to remain centered amid chaos, he inhaled deeply. Jack understood now that this journey was far less about winning a single battle, and more about discovering a lasting part of himself waiting to be unearthed. As he sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, the enormity of the task hit him like a tidal wave. What revelation awaited him once he crossed the threshold of conflict? Would he unveil strength he never thought he possessed? Or would he fend off a darker part of his identity, one that preferred comfort over confrontation? He was on the precipice of something monumental, both frightening and thrilling. The time had come to face the woman who threatened Lily's future, and in doing so, confront the man he had been avoiding. Jack's heart raced as he stepped out of his car, every nerve ending electrified with both anticipation and dread. The crisp air enveloped him, biting at his cheeks, but he hardly noticed. All his focus honed in on the looming confrontation with Lily's stepmother. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing against him, as if the universe demanded he rise to this occasion, to finally carve out a piece of his identity that had long lain dormant. He walked towards the stepmother's home, his mind churning with the legal knowledge he had acquired and the strategic angles he'd mapped out. Each step was a reminder of the woman's power, masked in the guise of authority that had manipulated Lily's life for far too long. Jack's resolve solidified. To dismantle that power, he needed more than hard facts. He needed to get into her mind, to predict her moves before she made them. The door loomed before him, an unyielding barrier between him and the confrontation that felt inevitable. He inhaled, the air heavy with the scent of impending conflict. He knocked, the sound echoing in his ears, a calculated thud marking the beginning of his reckoning. When the door creaked open, there she was, Lily's stepmother, her expression betraying nothing. "Jack," she began, her voice silky smooth like dark chocolate, yet laced with an undercurrent of suspicion. "What brings you here?" "Lily needs to talk," Jack replied, his voice steady. He watched for signs of her defensiveness as the words flitted between them like a sparrow sizing up the air for an escape. "I want to know how she's been doing." Her eyes narrowed, calculating. "This is an unusual visit, isn't it? I hope you're not suggesting I'm not taking care of her." Jack shook his head, reinforcing his purpose. "What I'm suggesting is that I need to understand how Lily is really doing. It seems she's been struggling at school, and I'm worried." Her smile faltered for just a second, a glimpse of the predator beneath the surface. Children often act out in ways that expose their insecurities. It's part of growing up, Jack. A piece of her facade crumbled with that statement. It radiated the self-righteousness he had come to expect. Jack didn't let her shift the narrative. "That's true, but sometimes it's indicative of something deeper. You see, I've learned a lot since we last spoke." With each sentence, he felt his confidence grow, his words cutting through the fog of manipulation she wielded. Jack questioned, pushed, prodded gently, revealing the cracks in her carefully constructed story with every inquiry he made. Each lie she told fed his determination. He was perfectly aware that this wasn't merely about Lily anymore. As the conversation progressed, Jack observed subtle shifts. The hesitation in her voice, the avoidance of eye contact. He noted the signs, internalizing them as pieces of a puzzle he had to complete. It was a dance, a power struggle. He was battling not just for Lily, but for the validation he desperately needed. This was no longer a matter of fear or anxiety. It was about assertion and reclaiming a part of himself that had faltered for years. "Jack," she interjected, her tone dropping an octave, a veiled threat surfacing like ice under pressure. "You have to know your place. I am Lily's guardian. You cannot come in here and attempt to undermine my authority." He felt the temperature shift, the stakes escalating. "I'm not here to undermine anybody. I'm here for Lily, and you know as well as I do that guardianship comes with responsibility, not just authority." His heart thrummed, each beat synchronized with a growing sense of purpose. The moment was charged with electric tension. He was beginning to discover the depth of his resolve. But just as he felt the thrill of traction, a new fear washed over him. What further revelations about Lily's situation could unravel before him? As he stood toe-to-toe with her relentless facade, what truths remained buried, waiting to strike and redefine everything he thought he understood? Jack would not leave empty-handed. The repercussions could fracture both their lives irrevocably. With every word exchanged, he was propelled toward a revelation, about Lily, about the woman across from him, and ultimately, about himself. What insanity awaited as the conversation continued? As Jack steeled himself for the impending fallout, he wondered, could he afford to unveil buried truths, or would it unleash a flood of consequences beyond his control? The atmosphere in the room thickened, a palpable tension that hung like fog, concealing both Jack's determination and the stepmother's cunning. Jack could feel each heartbeat echoing within him, a drumbeat of resolve pushing him forward. There was something almost primal in the way these two adversaries circled one another. He, a fighter finally stepping into the ring, and she, an established champion, comfortable in her dominion. Lily's stepmother adjusted her stance, the shift revealing the slightest hint of her discomfort. Jack seized this moment. "I understand that parenting is challenging," Jack began, his voice unwavering. "But Lily's well-being isn't simply about keeping her fed and sheltered. The emotional support she needs is paramount. Yet, you seem intent on keeping the narrative under wraps." Her expression hardened, a mask of control shattering slightly, as she realized he wouldn't be swayed. Jack's knowledge felt like armor. Years spent mastering legal nuances and understanding psychological manipulation had equipped him for this very moment. "Are you so afraid of what I might uncover that you'd rather bully me than engage in an open conversation?" he probed, a mix of calm indignation coloring his tone. A shadow crossed her face. This was no longer a mere test of wills. Jack had ignited something within her, a flicker of vulnerability veiled by a raging storm. She countered, "You're being reckless, Jack. You think you can step in and play knight in shining armor? You don't know the first thing about what it means to be a guardian." Staring into her eyes, calculating and cold, Jack sensed he was peeling back layers of his opponent, one emotional exposure at a time. "True," he admitted, "but I know what it means to fight for someone you care about, and that's exactly why I'm here." Caught off guard, she recoiled, the icy confidence wavering but only for a moment. "Do you believe that makes you qualified? You barely know her. You're bringing your own baggage into this, projecting your hopes and fears onto a child who deserves stability." Her words cut deeper than he'd anticipated, challenging him to reflect on his own motivations. Was he inserting himself into this situation out of a genuine desire to assist, or out of a desperate need to prove his worth? Jack paused, gathering his thoughts while his heart raced ahead. He knew his inexperience with children might indeed complicate things, but he also had clarity. He wanted to be the adult Lily could trust, the ally she could confide in. "I'm trying to understand," he said, voice softer now, "because I genuinely care about Lily, not just as a figure of sympathy, but as someone I want to see thrive. If that makes me reckless, so be it." The stepmother's eyes flickered with anger and perhaps a hint of acknowledgement that her hold was slipping. Yet she quickly recoiled, pushing back with renewed vigor. "Just remember, Jack," she hissed, "you step too close to the fire, and you'll get burned. This isn't just about you. You could ruin her life." The implications of her words hung in the air, an unspoken threat delivered with chilling precision. Jack straightened. Her words ignited a flame of defiance inside him. "Maybe it's time to expose the fire," he challenged. "If ruin is what's left in the wake of your authority, then perhaps it's your fortress that needs to crumble." As the confrontation swelled, Jack's resolve crystallized. He would do whatever it took to protect Lily. But in that moment of assertiveness, worry edged into his thoughts. Who else had become ensnared by her twisted game? What pieces lay outside this verbal duel, waiting to be uncovered? Jack needed to shift from reactive to proactive, a strategy built on transparency and resilience. As he looked across the room, the stepmother's gaze responded, a duel of wills, with shadows of unspoken secrets lying dormant. Jack had unearthed something crucial, but what fresh chaos awaited as he pressed harder for the truth? In this dangerous game, just how far would he go to save Lily? The next confrontation loomed, promising to unveil truths he was not fully prepared to face. The silence that followed was charged, crackling with unspoken challenges and dormant fears. Jack could feel the weight of the stepmother's glare pressing against him, battling against the intensity of his own resolve. Yet, beneath that simmering tension lay a series of questions he hadn't addressed and fears he needed to confront. He knew he had to harness his emotional turmoil into clarity, lest it cloud his judgment and weaken his resolve. He might have blurted out the first thing that came to mind, defending his intentions, justifying his existence in Lily's life. But restraint reigned. Jack realized that every move he made in this game of shadows and rhetoric could either fortify his position or lead him down the wrong path. Understanding the stakes involved, he actively engaged in a strategy, shedding reactive impulses in favor of deliberate action. He needed information, evidence of Lily's life under her stepmother's care, the textures of her emotional landscape. "Let's look at the facts," he began, voice low but firm, maintaining a conversational tone intended to disarm. "I'm not here to rob Lily of her security. I'm here to ensure she has her voice, to bring light to her situation. A true guardian nurtures, not oppresses." Her laughter filled the space, a dry echo that revealed more than amusement. "What makes you think Lily wants you in her life? You've walked in here with grand intentions, but you're a stranger to her. A newcomer trying to rewrite a story you don't belong in." The words stung, and for the briefest moment, Jack questioned his position. Yet, as he examined his own motivations, pride began to rise, intertwining with purpose. He didn't care if he was a stranger. He was a stranger willing to fight for her happiness. Dismissing her taunts wasn't easy. Jack felt like he was still gathering strength to move boldly into unknown territory. He considered how his own childhood hardships had provided him clarity on the importance of supportive adults in a child's life. That experience fueled his conviction. If he could assist just one child who felt trapped, perhaps he could begin to redefine his own narrative. "I've learned that connections don't always come from familiarity, but from understanding and empathy," he replied, keeping his gaze steady. At that moment, he felt a flicker of confidence. You may have the upper hand in terms of experience, but how much do you actually know about Lily's fears, her hopes? That question hovered unresolved between them. The stepmother's silence spoke volumes, betraying an unsettling realization. Jack pressed on, searching within himself for the courage to delve deeper. If she was the gatekeeper in this saga, he needed to understand who his adversary truly was. You can choose to keep her isolated, or you can choose to be the kind of guardian she deserves. The question is, what kind of world are you trying to create for her? In that charged pause, Jack felt something shift within him, an undeniable sense of empowerment mixed with desperation. The stepmother's demeanor faltered, her confidence chipped away by his unwavering stance. Perhaps she wasn't as invulnerable as she appeared. Whatever the outcome, Jack recognized that he needed allies to support his intentions, possibly other family members, school counselors, or even friends who could provide insight into Lily's day-to-day life. But first, he had to tread carefully, convinced that the seed of doubt he had planted earlier might eventually bear fruit. The more he considered his moves, the more he realized. This clash was just the beginning. What dark secrets lay in wait beneath the surface, hidden details connected to Lily's existence? As he pondered this, his intuition urged action, to seek knowledge not only to fortify his case, but to challenge her narrative effectively. Resolutely, he thought of his next steps, strategic, patient, and shrewd. The next encounter would be pivotal if he hoped to strike at the core of their conflict. Would he find psychiatric professionals, or reach out to Lily herself? Each decision would be crucial, each moment pivotal. The air thickened again as he prepared for the real battle ahead. It would not simply be about defending Lily, but rather about unearthing the truth behind every concealed interaction. As Jack stood firm, he realized the battleground of words would soon shift to one of actions. With every ounce of strength, he would prepare to confront whatever shadowy truths lay ahead, knowing that soon he would need to face not just the stepmother, but perhaps the very system that had kept Lily trapped. When the moment came, would he be ready to expose the foundations of that darkness and finally liberate the light that Lily desperately craved? Jack stepped back from the sharp tension of the confrontation, the weight of their exchange still echoing in his mind. For a moment, he felt disoriented by the reality of his mission. The stepmother's disdain had exposed not only his vulnerability, but also ignited a fierce determination. He could not let doubt creep in. He had to gather his resources and solidify his strategy. Thinking quickly, he recalled the counsel of a childhood friend who had once worked in social services. Her words had struck him as a lifeline. Always document everything. The truth is in the details. With a renewed focus, Jack resolved to start from the ground up, seeking credible connections and gathering tangible evidence to support Lily's plight. He knew that reaching out to people who cared for children could offer him a clearer insight into Lily's well-being. Armed with a plan, he took out his phone and began to search for local child advocacy organizations. Each number he dialed was a step towards crafting a web of support for Lily. He steeled himself for questions, anticipating the skepticism he might face, but his conviction was solid. After a handful of calls, Jack finally found a responsive and empathetic voice on the other end. Sarah, a seasoned child psychologist familiar with the impacts of toxic family dynamics. Her demeanor conveyed reassurance and an understanding that felt in that moment like a breath of fresh air. "Mr. Jack, I'd be happy to help. It's critical for us to analyze any behavioral signs or indicators from Lily," she emphasized, highlighting her willingness to collaborate. "If there are specific concerns you have, I encourage you to document your observations and any information you can gather from others who have seen her regularly." Each suggestion she made deepened his sense of purpose. Jack meticulously noted the next steps and began to draft a list of people, teachers, family members, to reach out to in order to paint a fuller picture of Lily's life away from the reach of her stepmother's shadow. When the call ended, Jack felt a flicker of hope manifest. Instead of feeling lost, he was now a detective in this saga, combing through lives to uncover the truth. He set a line of action into motion, feeling the foundations of anxiety mix with resolve as he began to articulate his observations about Lily, no longer just a passive observer, but an active participant in her narrative. Next, he reached out to a few of Lily's school friends, kids who laughingly spoke of sleepovers and silly games, far removed from the smothering insistence of her home life. He was now on the verge, stepping into the lives of other children to learn if the reality he feared was indeed as bleak as he suspected. As each conversation unraveled more intricate layers, Jack was faced with the vulnerabilities of childhood, the fragile connections that held so many young individuals together. The short snippets of laughter turned into hushed whispers about Lily. She was not just an isolated figure. She was a child whose spirit flickered under the oppressive weight of her stepmother's control. With every secret he unearthed, his resolve deepened. It was perhaps not just about defiance against the stepmother, but about standing as an ally to someone crying out to be seen. Jack realized he wasn't merely gaining information, but was developing the skills necessary to advocate, articulating the needs of someone silenced. But amidst the rising tide of support, another realization loomed. The stepmother would not sit idly by while he gathered strength. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated. What retaliatory measures would she take to protect her territory? Jack's heart raced as uncertainty flickered in his mind. He needed to solidify his movements, to strategize his next encounter. As the girth of his quest expanded, he understood more clearly. The confrontation ahead wouldn't be simple. It would require all of his cunning and courage to cross the threshold from information gathering into bold action. Just then, as he stared at the notes scattered across his desk, a new question surfaced, a chilling realization that perhaps the darkness wouldn't just come from outside, but also from within the structure he sought to disrupt. What if the truth he unearthed was only the beginning of a much darker revelation about Lily's life? In this escalating tension, Jack steeled himself once more, ready to take unyielding steps down an uncharted path. What awaited him there would test everything he had worked for thus far. The mantle of Jack's purpose pressed down heavily as he turned his thoughts to the implications of the conversations he had initiated. Each one had unfolded a narrative stained with shadows, whispers of hidden fears and suppressed cries. The laughter of Lily's friends haunted him, a stark contrast to the growing unease deep within. He resolved to open his mind further, questioning not just the validity of his findings, but also the courage required to face the battles ahead. The rhythm of his heart quickened whenever he pondered the stepmother's potential responses. She had already demonstrated her willingness to dismiss him with contempt. What would she do now that he posed a real threat to her reign? The questions clawed at his mind as he jotted down potential strategies to safeguard not only his efforts, but also the precarious safety of Lily. As night fell, the glow from his laptop illuminated scattered papers filled with testimonies and notes. He crafted a plan, devising a list of supportive organizations, legal resources, and potential allies. Jack's meticulous approach harkened back to his days as a young man, when he carefully compiled data for his first major project in college, a community outreach proposal. He had believed then that knowledge could spark change, and now, with the stakes infinitely higher, he clung to that conviction like a lifeline. That evening, sleep eluded him. Haunted by the thoughts of Lily, Jack paced his small apartment, rehearsing potential conversations, analyzing the motivations of those he had yet to contact. A web of complex relationships spooled in his mind, linking Lily with her friends, teachers, and distant relatives. He recognized now that he was building more than a case. He was trying to construct a lifeline for a child submerged in turmoil, Early the next morning, Jack gathered the courage to reach out to a lawyer specializing in child advocacy, a resource he had hesitated to contact out of fear of being dismissed. After several moments of self-doubt, he dialed the number. The voice on the other end was sharp, yet patient. "Mr. Jack, I appreciate your concern," the attorney said, "but I need to ask you, what evidence do you have to suggest that Lily is in danger?" His heart sank momentarily, but he refused to crumble. "I have testimonies, friends who've seen her behavior change, teachers who've noticed her reluctance to participate in activities." Each word poured from him with renewed vigor. "She's isolated, and I believe her stepmother is manipulating her situation." "Then we need to discuss how to substantiate those claims," the lawyer stated, her tone shifting to one of intrigue. "Your observations are a start, but it will be imperative to document and communicate them effectively." Jack felt a spark of possibility arise within the confines of his anxiety. This was it. A doorway leading from intimate concern to actionable steps. He arranged to meet the lawyer the following week, laying the groundwork for an approach that would blend legal strategy with psychological insight. As he hung up, however, a fresh wave of dread swept over him. What if his actions prompted the stepmother to escalate her control? Would she retaliate against those he had spoken to, or worse, against Lily? This added another layer of urgency to his mission. He recognized yet again that he needed allies, people willing to stand beside him, to share the weight of this pressing endeavor. That evening, Jack initiated a gathering with the friends he had contacted. He intended to foster a collective understanding of the dangerous environment surrounding Lily, galvanizing their younger voices into a chorus that could be powerful enough to shake the status quo. As he spoke to them about the value of their experiences, he was struck by a daunting realization. Strength in numbers could be a powerful force, but it could also attract scrutiny. The very idea of forming a coalition among minors invited risk, making them vulnerable to scrutiny from the adults in their lives. The exact kind of inquiry he sought to evade. Determined, Jack decided to start the meetings in secret, creating a safe space for the children to share their truths without fear of reprisal. He understood this might be a pivotal moment, not just for Lily, but for his understanding of how far he was willing to go for her sake. But as the plan solidified in his mind, Jack was met with a chilling thought. In rallying these children together, was he creating an army of witnesses, or painting a target on their backs? The impending confrontation loomed larger, and the shadows surrounding Lily grew darker, enveloping Jack in a suffocating tension that signaled the fight was about to begin. Could he secure the evidence needed without sparking a backlash that could endanger the very girl he was striving to save? With his resolve hardening into something steely and uncompromising, Jack prepared to step into the unknown, ready to do battle on behalf of an innocent child. The moment of truth crept closer, and he was resolute in his pursuit, unaware of the personal revelations that awaited him in this rapidly deepening conflict. Jack stood at a pivotal crossroad in his life, the enormity of what lay ahead fueling both fear and determination. The shadows had deepened around Lily, amplifying the urgency of his mission, while he readied himself for the confrontation that would decide not just her fate, but his own transformation. The voices of the children he had gathered echoed in his mind, innocent, filled with fear, each cry for help empowering him to press onward. As he prepared for the next step, he meticulously documented every piece of evidence, harnessing the connections he had forged over the past weeks. Witnesses, school reports, behavioral observations, all would pave the way to ensure Lily's safety. This was no longer about merely confronting the stepmother. It was about dismantling a system that had perpetuated abuse and capturing his own identity as a protector. On the day of the critical meeting with the attorney, Jack walked into the law office with a purpose that felt palpable. He wasn't just a man of wealth seeking justice. He was a man transformed into a guardian. The conversation with his lawyer propelled him further into the embrace of his new identity, armed with knowledge about legal avenues and bolstered by unwavering conviction. "You have a strong case, Jack," the lawyer assured him, her brows furrowed in thoughtful consideration. but we need to ensure that we present this in a way that reaffirms Lily's happiness and safety. With each step of the process, Jack found rewards in his evolving character. Listening to the children reminded him of his own childhood struggles. He could relate to their feelings of being unheard. Every innocent voice sharing their experiences pushed him to dig deeper into his reservoir of empathy and strength. As he left the meeting, a flood of clarity washed over him. The path ahead was treacherous, but the man he was becoming was ready to navigate its complexities. Each encounter, every conversation with those who cared for Lily, fortified him with resilience. He realized this journey was never just about the confrontation with her stepmother. It was about his own emergence from a life defined by isolation into one of action, advocacy, and unwavering courage. Days turned into a timeline of strategic planning, the upcoming confrontation with the stepmother looming larger than before. Jack was no longer the passive observer of his life. He was a pivotal player stepping into a vocation of protection. He faced his fears head-on, not just for Lily's sake but also as part of his own self-rediscovery. Finally, the day came when he would confront the stepmother again. This time, armed with the knowledge of his gathered evidence, Jack strode toward her home with a mix of anxiety and fortitude. As he knocked on the door, he felt a rush of adrenaline surging through his veins, not from dread, but from empowerment. The moment she opened the door, Jack's resolve hardened. "We need to talk about Lily," he asserted, a slight tremor in his voice betraying his nerves, but also revealing an unyielding determination. Her demeanor shifted upon seeing the him, and Jack noted that this time, the mask of confidence she had worn before wavered slightly. "What now?" she asked, her guarded tone edged with thinly veiled hostility. "I have gathered information about her situation at school and her behavior that raises serious concerns," Jack stated firmly. "It's time to prioritize Lily's well-being over your control." The ensuing dialogue was sharper, more charged than before. Jack laid out his findings methodically, ensuring he crafted each sentence to cut through her defenses. He noted her flinching as he presented evidence, testimonies from friends, written documentation from teachers, and insights from the psychologist he had consulted. By the end of their exchange, the balance had shifted. No longer was he trembling beneath the weight of her disdain. He felt himself rise to meet the challenge, bolstered by the support of the children whose laughter he longed to protect. "Jack, you have no idea what kind of mess you're trotting into," she replied, her voice tinged with anger and frustration. "Step away from this. You're simply making things more complicated." "I will do everything within my power to ensure that Lily is safe and happy," he countered, the conviction in his voice settling into an undeniable strength. "I won't back down." As the confrontation reached its peak, Jack felt a powerful sense of release and self-awareness. This moment had crystallized everything he had learned, transformed by the pain he had witnessed and the responsibility he chose to embrace. In the days that followed, the impact of Jack's audacious stand began rippling outward. His efforts sparked a series of investigations into Lily's household, revealing layers of the truth that had remained hidden. School authorities stepped in, support systems were activated, and the wheels of justice began to turn, pushing toward a resolution that would ultimately protect Lily from the chaos that enveloped her life. The decision he made to fight for Lily not only changed her life significantly, but it also redefined his existence. Jack emerged from the confrontation not only as a protector, but as an advocate dedicated to the well-being of children who were helpless like Lily. The final moment came when Lily was placed in a safe environment, where joy could bloom again. Jack received a handwritten letter from Lily, filled with childlike drawings and innocent words of gratitude. As he read it, tears brimmed in his eyes. But this time they were tears of joy and pride, not regret. In that moment, Jack understood the profound transformation he had undergone. He had achieved not just a victory for Lily, but an accomplishment of reclaiming his purpose. One not shackled by wealth, but embedded firmly in love, empathy, and true advocacy. Jack Thompson had come full circle and found meaning amidst chaos. The emptiness that had once overflowed within was replaced with solid confidence, a recognized competence, and an established position as a true champion for those who needed a voice. This was the end of one chapter, marking the beginning of another, where Jack's journey of purpose would continue to unfold, undaunted and resolute. He emerged not merely as a millionaire, but as a person of unwavering integrity, dedicated to creating ripples of positive change in the world around him. Now you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support these powerful narratives. Comment your reactions and theories about this profound conclusion, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this resolution. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.